Well, welcome everybody. My name is Kelly Glissmeyer from Rigby, Idaho. Despite what my sign says down at my tying station that I'm from Rexburg. I like Rexburg, I work there, but I'm not from there. So I'm going to tie some Spring Creek flies today, but before I do that, I'm going to tie one particular fly. It's a new pattern that I've developed that will be in Fly Tire shortly. They picked up the article, and it's a articulated dry fly. It's an articulated stone fly pattern. It's called the booty shaker. And I'll show you how I tie that right now, okay? I can get that out of the way for this one. Bigger flies, I don't need the magnification. What I've got here is a articulation shank like you use for streamers. This is a fish skull. I tie this with, this is going to be a salmon fly version. So I tie this with a bright orange thread. This is Semper Fly, Floral Bright it's called. And I use this in an orange, number 7. And the reason I do that is because in the natural they have some bright orange, reddish orange or orange on them that represents the natural. It's got that color. They have that natural color in them. So I use that in my imitation here. So I'll go back almost an inch on that fish skull shank. And I'll tie a thread bump right there. I'll take some biots in a rusty color. The color going to goes with the pale salmon color of the bottom of the fly, so it works well with the color combination. We'll attach those so that thread bump makes them flare up and out just a little bit. And I like to tie them a little long. They seem to look better on the finished fly that way. There we go. Everybody see that, how those go on and they flare out because of that thread bump. Now, we'll go on here with about a 3/8 inch piece of 2mm foam in a salmon color. I'll trim that to a dull point, like that. It disappears in my shirt, doesn't it? I'll trim that in a dull point like that. And attach that on the bottom of the fly with the tag, the big piece hanging rolling out the back. And I'll tie that right back down to where the tails are tied in, just like that. Now we'll come around to the front side, the top side, and I'll take a chocolate brown piece of foam, 2mm foam. And I'll cut this almost the same size. When I cut it, I can eyeball this as I cut it, and I'll cut it just a little bit, just maybe a 32nd inch wider than I did the bottom strip. You can see that that's just a little bit wider. And I'll take just a very small slice at an angle out of that. Then I'll come into that piece of foam after I've sliced those pieces off the sides, and I'll come in and cut a V-notch out of that, just like that. Can everybody see that? I'll lay that over the top of the tails, and with my thread clear back where the tails were tied in and where that salmon-colored foam was tied in. I'll lay that over and get about an 1/8 of an inch down from the V-notch to tie that in. And I'll tie that with several thread wraps so you can see the thread at the top of the fly. We'll pull that back, advance the thread up a very short distance, about an 1/8 of an inch, and I'll tie in start doing my segments for the bottom of for the entire fly. And we'll do about 4 there. And see how that looks. We'll pull the top right down over the top. Now this top section on that first segment looks a little funky, and that's because of the way I tied the tail end, but it still works. If you want to see how I do this, I'll split the foam once I've done the thread wraps to secure those two pieces. I just pull my thread right out between the two pieces of foam to get it back on the hook. I advance up the hook, a little bit larger segment here, and I try to do larger segments as I go, or at least the same size, to show the, going smaller from back to front. About 3 wraps to secure that. Now here's the reason that I tied this or cut this foam strip just a little bit larger. If you'll notice, this top foam hangs over that edge of the bottom foam, and it acts like it gives 2 little pontoons off the side. And by doing that, it improves the floatability and stability of the fly. Come on in, guys. I'm tying a articulated dry fly, stone fly. So now we'll advance up and do the next segment. Do the same thing with the foam. Advance it clear up to the eye of the shank, and do the last section. Now, before I go any farther on this section, I'll normally glue this. Don't have my glue with me. I'll normally glue this right here to keep the thread and the foam all together. Then we'll tie off that the last top section.
Tim Davison to the top gun pond.
Now we'll pull the 2 pieces of foam back from the eye and get some thread wraps in there, and then finish that fly off with some half hitches. You can do this with a whip finisher, obviously. I don't use one. By the time you've picked up that tool and got it set, I'm done. So nothing against that, just wait it. So I trim my thread. So now we've got this like this. What we'll do is trim this foam, these 2 tag ends. I'll trim them basically the same length, just a little bit longer from this last section that I tied. And this is an integral part of the finished fly. See how that is? What I'll do is come in at the top and I'll cut off the ears, I'll cut off the corners. See how that is? Cut off the corners. Come into the bottom and I cut a V-notch out of the middle, going back to the eye of the hook. You see how that is? Top and bottom. This is important to have. This keeps the abdomen under control when it's hooked to the hook shank. So, last step in this. Make sure that's all lined up. You see how that is there in the middle? The hooks, the articulation shank. Next thing I do is I'll come in here with my wire cutters and slide those right up to where the thread started when I started this fly, and I'll cut that off. Now, that still leaves a little pointy tag. That's never going to be an issue, okay? But what the issue is you've got to glue this portion. You've got to, I thought I brought it, but you put a drop of glue. Let's see what I got. It's on 19, clear down to the end. Thank you. So I'll put a drop of glue right here to make sure that doesn't come undone, because you pull that thread and things are going to start coming unwound. We don't want that to happen. So there's the finished abdomen. Pretty cool looking, isn't it? And with that top foam being just a little bit larger, it acts for those little pontoons out to the side to keep it steady when it's on the water. Okay? Okay, that's part one. Let's do part two. Part two requires a special hook, and this is the hook. The only one I've been able to find. It's called the Gamakatsu B10S, which is a stinger hook for streamers. The reason I use this hook is because it's got a shorter shank, which is the right size for the thorax, so it doesn't make the fly look weird. And then it's got a wide gape. Because of the foam, you want a wide gape so that it will hook fish because of the foam that's going to be underneath it. So this is an important hook to use for this pattern. I looked long and hard for this. It was difficult to find the right hook, and I finally found it. Oh, it's also got a straight eye, as you can see. So we'll place the hook in the vise. We'll attach our thread. Thank you. So let's go back to the abdomen. I'm going to put a drop of glue right there. Secure everything. Thank you very much. I knew I'd forget something. Oh, now we'll attach our thread right behind the eye and wrap it back. Right to where the bend starts. Take some 12-pound test monofilament in the Maxima. You doesn't have to be Maxima. The size is right. The 12-pound test, which is a .13. And that serves as a great articulation loop. So we'll attach that on the far side of the top of the hook, if you get my drift. It's not right on the top, it's on the far side of the top. Like that. It's not on the far side, it's on the far side of the top. We'll wrap that down just a little past the shank. You see that? Now we'll take the piece that the abdomen that we tied, and we'll run that piece of 12-pound test through the shank loop or eye, and we'll take a couple wraps down on that. What I want to do here is I want to get this so that the shank is about level with the hook this way, okay? And by doing that, I make sure that it stays where it ought to when it's. Now you see why I've got those little wings out the bottom. Those keep it from going too far around and keep control of the abdomen. So we'll wrap that down a few wraps. We'll wrap down the rest of that monofilament. We'll add a drop of glue to this because you put hard materials like nylon on that hook shank, and they tend to they could pull out if you don't secure them or something. So we'll add that glue. Now, what I'll get here is a piece of foam about 3/4 of an inch long, and I'll trim that down so it's about 1/4 inch wide. And I'll fold that in half, just like that. Trim an angle on both sides, leaving a ramp. You see the angle comes up and then it's flat. Do the same on the other side. And that's what I end up with. We'll lay that down on the top of the hook shank so that it's just about a 32nd from the articulation top piece of foam. You see that? How close they are? Okay. We'll tie that down. The reason for this step is an important one. This keeps the hair for the wing from going down too low, getting tangled up in the articulation. And so now I'll come up after I've bound that down like that. I'll lift the foam straight up, pull it forward as far as I dare without tearing it, and start doing a thread dam right up against it and a little behind it, just to angle that. Hello, gentlemen. Tying an articulated stonefly. So, now that I got that ramp built, we want to put in the hair. I use bleached elk hair, and I use a pretty good clump of it. The reason being is there's a lot of shorter hairs in that clump as I cut it, so that's about the size that I cut. Now you all have combs and tools to do this, right? Just take your scissor points, just like that, nice and lightly. You don't have to change tools or go looking for where you've laid the tool last or where your scissors are when you're done. You just do that and you get all that fur out of the base of the hair. Now we want to place it in the stacker. And you want to find the longest hair you can get because it makes it a lot easier to finish the wing. So we're going to do a good hair stack on that because I like a nice even wing. Gary LaFontaine, he would cut it off the hide and tie it on the fly. And he says the rougher they look, the better. And he caught a lot of fish and had a lot of great patterns. So now those came out pretty even. Got one I need to pull out. But what I need to do is move my fingers to the butts, and as I do that, you see the shorter ones I pull out. And there's a lot of shorter ones to pull out. And so once I've done that, I'll measure my wing, and I want the wing to go just past the split the foam part on the body, on the abdomen. So once I get that, I'll measure that, and I'll grab that with my left hand, and now I'll take the thread around, and you notice I didn't put that on the shank yet. I took the thread around the butts, and I pull that fairly tight until they start to flare. Then I put it down where I want it on the hook shank and pull that tight. And that secures that very well. So I get some really good cranks of thread on that. Now, here's a real thing. When you're doing, anytime you're doing hair wings, this is a real tip to remember. Because as you got those butts flared out in the front right here, just take your tying thread through them and watch what they do. They flare like you're spinning. Okay? When you do that, you're actually securing those butts all the way down and making a stronger fly. So you don't have just that one tie-in point where if it gets wet and the thread stretches and they're all gonna pull out in one clump. You don't want that. Now we're just gonna come in and trim the butts, the hair butts. Now, one last step here that I like to do, I'll bring my thread right back through the hair butts. You see it pulled that a little forward from where that foam is, so I'll anchor it one more time, just a little farther. And I got more hair tied down. But what I'll do here is I'll come in here and like I'm tying a posted wing, and I'll do some horizontal wraps around the base of those the hair. Now you see it stand up, but it won't be standing up. The whole point is to get it to stay as a clump when we bring the foam back, so it's not getting down in this part of the fly to impede the action of that articulation, that articulated abdomen. Now, advance the thread up to about halfway there. I'll take another foam strip, and this one I cut a little wider than the 3/8 for the bottom, or for the abdomen. We want this just a little bigger for the head and the thorax area, so that's a little bit wider. I'll just taper that off with a couple angled cuts, and I'll tie that in right on the bottom of the fly. This is probably the most difficult piece to tie in and get it right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tie that up until it's right tight against the hook eye. What this is going to do is end up forming a bullet head for the finished fly. We'll base that down. I don't care if it twists or slides around there, because all I have to do is just twist it back. and it slides right into place. Now you see that it's level with the hook eye. Okay. Now you're wondering, why is that going that way? Well, it's got to finish the fly right. We'll take another piece of foam that's it's wider than the back piece and a little bit wider than this piece, because we want those pontoons over the top when we're finished. This one I'll trim off again, just like I did with the salmon colored. A little too long. And we'll take that right on the top right here. Now, I got them both tied down. I got them both parallel with the hook the right way. You see how that works. Twist them so they're just right. And I advance the thread between where I tied in the hair and where the thread is to tie in this foam. I'll be about a third of the way back from the eye of the hook here. And I'll do just the opposite direction where the back on the abdomen I was going back to front and building the segments. Here I'm going from front to back. First I'm going to build the head, and that's just a smaller piece, just like that. Then I'll pull the dark foam over and do the same thing. Make sure I get enough thread wraps on there, not so much to secure it, but to see it, so you can see the articulation color, that orange color that we're trying to show that's on the salmon flies. Now, you see here's my thread going around the bottom, and I take it out between the two. Remember, that's how you do that to get it back on the hook shank. So now I'm going to wrap this thread back to where I tied in the hair, where the hair stops, right there. And now because the hook is in the way here, I'll kind of fold that underneath and stab it with the hook right in the middle so it stays put and stays centered. And I'll come in and grab this, pull that down around the hook shank, and tie that to the thorax area of this fly. Didn't go far enough, hang on. That did it. There we go. Hate to say that about anybody, but okay. Now put a little glue in there, glues down the butts, glues the thread, and it's going to glue these two pieces of foam together. So now pull the top piece over like that, wrap that in the same groove that you wrap the bottom one in, and I just do 3 of them right now. What we're going to do now,
if you've been in the fly tying or the adventure theater today and seen the flat screen,
I'm going to come in here and cut that piece of foam.
Donated by R.C. Willie. They're $1,600 Sony Bravia
cut the top piece of foam the same way.
Television, 65-inch. You can buy them here at the show for $1,100.
On the top piece of foam, I'm going to cut a V-notch. If you've seen the wing pads of salmon flies, stone flies, you'll see that they've got a little wing pad that looks kind of like that. That look familiar for a stone fly. And then on the bottom, so I'm just the opposite on the top of this fly here as I did on the abdomen. On the abdomen, I trimmed the corners off of the top chocolate piece.
The top gun,
the bottom one I did the V shape. Here on the bottom piece, I'll do the just the opposite, and and now that kind of matches the two, welds them together a little bit, helps them fill in that space there. Okay, got a few stray hairs we're going to have to take care of. A few stray ones over here too. Okay, last step. We've got to get some legs on this fly. So grizzly flutter legs, black barred orange. They look like this, and I'll tie two legs in that'll give two legs on each side when I'm done. About 2 inches long. I'll tie those in at the point where the bottom foam meets the top foam, that joint. Pretty simple. I'll tie the front one in just a little bit shorter than the back one. Just like that. Tie one on the other side. You could do that, what I just did, those two double half hitches with the whip finisher right here, but you'd have to do it right here at this joint. This is where you finish the fly, where you finish the thread of your fly. So I just do two double half hitches. And I do 3 of those. So now we'll glue that. I put a spot of glue right there at each joint of where the legs were tied in. I've got something funky going on there. Okay. And there it is, the Booty Shaker Stone. One of the first of its kind, articulated dry fly. Here's the deal. When those flies, those big bugs are on the water, they start moving their legs. They start to crawl across the water. And as they do that, it moves their body, and their abdomens do this. They do that shake back and forth as they walk. So the rubber legs imitate the leg action, because they're just going to move, and then that articulation that we've got there does the rest. And like I said, Fly Tire has picked up this pattern, so this will be, if you subscribe to Fly Tire, you'll get the step-by-step with the photos on it soon, I hope. So, did you like that? That's different, isn't it? Okay, let's tie what we call a parasol emerger. Parasol emerger is a fly that I use in Spring Creek fishing for as an indicator fly, a slow or still water, Spring Creek or edge water on the river, indicator fly to drop nymphs underneath to where the fish are holding. Not spook the fish with the presentation, because you don't have a big indicator slapping on the water. It's not like you're putting a, thank you, just said it right there. It's not like you're putting a big stimulator on that would spook them too. Like in a Spring Creek, you won't find stone flies. Come on in, guys, tying some Spring Creek flies. You're going to tie the parasol emerger right now. The parasol emerger, like I said, it was invented by Ted Leeson, Jim Schollmeyer, and basically what it is it's a nymph that's suspended just below the surface by a parasol of material that holds in on the surface film while the nymph is just below it. We'll show you how to do that. So what I take here is I've got 8 strands of macrame yarn. You can use polypropylene yarn, the stuff used for wing posts. I like this color because this is the color I can see. I can see this color on a 70-foot cast. I can see it, and it's only a 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch tall. Okay, it's big around as, well, not even a dime, but it's suspending a nymph. So what I'm going to do is take that. Now I've unwove that. I don't know how you say it. It was woven, and I undid it. And now you got the 8 strands here that were together. And that's about the size you want to make the right puff, okay? So now that's all together, but you see it's still in strands. What I'm going to do is take my dubbing brush, or whatever you want to call that. It's a 22 bore brush, cleaning brush, and but it's turned into a fly tying tool with a bodkin on the end. So it's a pretty neat thing. This is a peak, by the way, if you're interested. So now I'll take that and I'll brush it out with that bore brush. And what I'm trying to do is just get it out of those individual strands, as you were, and turn it into one great big bunch of fibers, just like that. Okay, that's all it is, one big bunch of fibers. Now I'll take that, I'll pull them all together tight, transfer them to my right hand. Here I use Maxima Ultra Green in a 6-pound, which is 2X, basically. And all I'll do is I'll get the end of that, just like that. Can you see the I can't see it. Can you see the material there? And I'll just lay that over the top. I don't know how to do that. Now you see it. Lay it over the top like that, okay? And pinch that with my thumb. So I got the monofilament going at a cross section to the nylon or the polypropylene material. And all I'll do is reach around and grab that with my left hand, so I got both pieces of the nylon in my left hand and my macrame in the right hand. I fold the macrame over that loop just like that. Make sense? Everybody see how I did that? Now, you see how wide that is right there? I want to really compress that down, so I'll spin that several times, really tight, spin it. And then once I get, you see how tight how it went down from that big wide loop? And I'll spin it, and then I'll get about 6 twists in that, just like that. Now, imagine with me, if you will, this is your hook, this is you tying on, this is your tippet, and you're tying on a fly with an improved clinch knot. Now, a clinch knot, you just take it, you do your twists, you take it through the V-eye that you made there, and you grab onto that and you pull it tight. You wet it and pull it tight, and that's your clinch knot, okay? But an improved is you take it through that once, and then that made a circle right there, and you run that piece of that tag end up through that circle like that. Now I just grab the tag end with my teeth, I wet it with my tongue, and I pull it all tight, just like that. And then I seat that really tight into that material. The problem is this isn't a hook eye. It's not hard. You're not going to get a good bite unless you really make it a good bite, okay? So there you have that macrame material and the monofilament. What I'm going to do now is just clip off that material like that. You can see where how it's attached right there. You don't want that in the end fly. What's that? Oh, sorry. You see where it's attached there? You don't want that in the end fly. You want to get it all together so it's all one big mess. So what I'm going to do, and you can't see it here, is I'm going to take the bore cleaner, dubbing brush, and I'm just going to do what I did at first when I tried to align all those feathers or those fibers when they were all together as a rope or a thing that you'd use to hang a pot with. That's what macrame did, and brush those all out together. And so I'm getting rid of that hinge point. You see that? And so what I'll do is I'll spin that again really tight, get all those fibers all lined up with each other and tight in there, and I'll grip this piece with my left hand about 1/4 inch up, just like that. And I'll take my scissors, you gotta have really sharp ones for this, and I'll cross cut that. I won't cut with the way I pinched it even. I'll cross cut it like that, opposite that. And we'll cut that once, then we'll come back and do it on the parallel, and then we'll spin it. You see that? I spin it, and then I'll find some high fibers, and all I do is trim that down. What this ends up to be is about a 1/3 of a pom-pom. In crafting, make a pom-pom, this is about a 1/3. Now I go to deconstruct this because I don't want those fibers all lined up together. I want them against the grain, as you will, of the tie-in point. Now that's called a parasol puff. You don't see a hinge in there. It's all just one solid piece of material that'll stay round. The whole point here is this is going to be something that will carry a load of flies and tippets underneath it. So there's the finished puff. We're going to lay that aside. My favorite thing to do with this is tie it in a pheasant tail pattern. That's probably the most common one that I use. We use a Dairiki 125, a Moonlit 055 emerger hook, same thing. This is in a size 14. Now I'm going to have to bring this into play. I hope it doesn't foul up the camera work. I don't have good eyes anymore. When I get tying down below, that big salmon fly was easy to do, but the smaller ones are not. So attach my thread to the hook, we'll take it back down around the bend. I like these Dairiki hooks and the Moonlit hooks, the emerger hooks, because they're a shorter shank and they are a wide gape. You see the gape, you see how wide that is from here to here for the size hook that it is. Hooking power, you're hooking fish where you wouldn't hook them otherwise with some other hooks. Especially in this hook, you can go down to a size 22 or 24, and the gape is twice as wide as any other 22 or 24, so it's a great hook to have. What I'll do here is I'll take some pheasant tail material, and I'll get about five barbs. If you pull it out straight from the stem and then cut it off the feather, it leaves your barbs, your tails aligned straight. So you don't have to try to stack them or anything like that. So we'll tie that in. Now I kind of like my nymphs to have shorter tails than most. So we're going to pull those up just a little bit. So I did 2 wraps around those, and that was all. And I'll do 2 wraps in front now. That's important when you're doing materials, especially like pheasant tails, or you tie something in and you go reach for something, you bump your thread, and it comes undone and you lost everything. You have to start over. You do those 2 safety wraps in front of the material you just tied in every time, you'll always be safe and it won't come undone on you. Something to remember. So we've got the pheasant tails tied in. I'm going to tie in some small chartreuse wire. I use chartreuse on most of my nymph patterns. Most of the guys down here know me as the chartreuse guy, because I really advocate it in my nymphs. I use it a lot. I catch a lot of fish with these flies, especially this nymph. If I just tied a beadhead pheasant tail for you today, I can tell you right now that it is the bug that I catch probably 90% of my fish on. It's that good. Now, once I've tied that in, I'm going to tie in the parasol puff onto the hook shank. And what I do is, if I was tying a midge pattern, because midges when they hatch, they come up to the surface about with this orientation, okay? And they hatch through their head up here. Sometimes they'll even come like this and attach their bottom end to the top, but they'll still go out their head. Mayflies and caddis will come up at kind of an angle like this, and they'll come out their backs, their wing case. They split through the exoskeleton and through the surface film. That's how they get through the surface film, is splitting through their exoskeleton, which is bumped up against the surface film. And they'll go and do that and split out there. So if I want a midge to hang like this, I'd tie this in right behind the hook eye, right there, at about an angle like this, okay? And then it's going to suspend that fly correctly when it's in the water. When I'm going to do this as a mayfly, this is a PMD, the pheasant tail, I'm going to do it right like this. So I'm going to tie that in with about a 3/8 inch length on the parasol, about a third of the way back on the hook shank. Okay, then I'll just tie that stem down. Now, because we're putting that stem down hard on the I'm not supposed to break those off. On the hook shank, you want to glue this because it'll otherwise you'll lose the parasol. So what I'm going to do also is I'm going to tie down now over top of the tail butts, the wire, and the monofilament. And what that does when I tie back over from my tied in point, when you tie pheasant tails on a hook, what you're essentially doing is putting them in a vise with your thread, and that's why you see tails break off so easy. If you do what I did here, I put all my other materials on after I put the tails on. Then I wrap back over top of where the tie-in point is at. It actually puts a sleeve with all the pheasant tail butts, the wire, and the monofilament act as kind of a sleeve over that and protect those, so now they don't have a hard tie-in point. Just another tying tip to remember. So now, advance my thread up. I'm going to take my pheasant tails and wrap them up the hook shank for the abdomen. About 5 works for this size of fly. Pheasant tails are a little bit hard to work with because they get short once you get up to where you want to tie them. So there we go. I'll tie that in, and before I wrap that over the top, I want to do that in front of that post because that helps stand the post up. We'll get rid of those. Now you see how that is. Tied those off. We're going to take the wire. And just tuck that wire up underneath where the post is and tie that in underneath. Now, we're going to do a fun thing that I dropped something else there, but I can't see it. We're going to do a fun thing with peacock herl, and I'll take two good herls that I know have a lot of barbules on them, just like that. I'll hold them by their tip, and I'll stroke everything back. What I want to do is get the little barbs to stand out at a right angle to the stem. Okay, they're not going forward like they grew. They're standing out at a right angle. That's important for this next step. Now I'll take that stem and I'll cut off about the first 3/4 to an inch. The reason being is the tips on peacock herl are very brittle. I see a lot of guys that have tied for a long time and they tie their peacock in by the butts. They'll trim off the butts and tie them in by the butts. The farther you go down the stem, the stiffer they get and the more brittle they become. You got to get that sweet spot, so you cut off that first 3/4 to an inch, and then you tie them in just like this. And then they're going to be strong. You're going to have something that's supple, that works as you tie it. So now, I got 2 pieces of peacock. I got my thread. I'll bring them all down here together. Just get my fingers and bring them all together.
Pond, we've got the Canadian Stillwater Guru Phil Rally doing free casting.
Grab those all together just like that. All
You've got nothing better to do. You should go watch.
I'll trim the peacock herl butts off, about a 1/4 inch or so left. You see how that works, just like that. Now I'll hold on to this while I pull some thread out, take it up, and I'll attach it to the hook, just like that. Advance my thread to the eye of the hook. Now what I've got is I got 2 pieces of peacock herl, I've got 2 pieces of thread. I'll spin that counterclockwise. till I get what, now you see why it has to stand out at a right angle while I do that. But as you see that, there's a natural, perfectly formed peacock chenille. Bomb-proof. Teeth won't cut that peacock. I do this on everything that I put peacock on. I'll do the same method. And it's bomb-proof. You're not getting teeth cutting it and having the peacock come undone. It's just not going to happen. So, take my first wrap over the top, take my second wrap right behind it. Oh, I forgot a step. It's okay. I'm going to put that over there. I forgot to put in the thing that's going to keep my legs down, the wing case. And here I use a material that's called Mirage Tinsel in an opal color. And here's why I use it. If you can see that, it's got a mirror finish. We all have used pearl for years. This has got a mirror finish. This provides a much shinier flashback on your nymphs. I only use this anymore. That's all I use. So we're going to tie that in, tie it back to the post. Whoops. Come on. Okay. Lay that on top. And I'll tie that right hard to the post, so it's right tight against the post. Now we'll take the peacock curl that we had. Am I about done?
Oh. Are you?
So,
You still got to finish that.
one wrap over behind it, and then two more. I want to leave some room for the head because of the legs that I'll be tying in here. So there you have that part. Nice peacock thorax, just like you do on any pheasant tail. Now, this is a hen saddle patch, hen saddle, used for a lot of soft hackle flies. I use this for legs. Now, if you used it for legs, you'd probably come in and grab a feather, and you'd pull some off on one side, tie them in on the side of the fly, pull some off the other side, and tie them in on the near side to try to get legs for a nymph. And then you hope that they're the right length. You hope that you did even amounts on each side. Well, I'm going to show you how to solve that so it's always the same, and you're very happy with the results when you're done. I'll take one of those feathers. I'll grab it by so I just got the littlest amount under my tips of my fingers. So, you see I've done that, stroked everything back until all I've got is the tip, and I'll come in here and cut the tip out, okay? Now, transferring it to my right hand, I'll stroke forward about 10 fibers, 10 barbules or 12 on each side, just like that. Now, what I've got here is an X, okay? You see that X? X marks the spot where that bare stem is.
If we could have all the kids come under the 500 sign at 2:15, we're going to be
wraps,
wrapping off
not
a
hard wraps, two
fly
soft
for
wraps.
kids 17 and younger.
Two soft wraps right there to secure it on top of the hook. Because what I want to do is with my right hand I'm going to pull the stem here. The left hand is going to hold down the front part of that feather as I pull that through. And what that's going to do, I'm going to pull it through until I get what I think are the right length of legs on this nymph. And once I've done that, I'm going to take the material that I'm using for a shellback, and I'm going to pull it through between those two pieces, and I'm going to tie it down. So we're going to do 2 solid wraps, and here's that safety wrap, the 2 in front, okay? You do one more over the top, and here's what I'm going to do. I want that shellback to really pull down on that material. So I'm going to pull on the shellback material, pull on my thread as tight as I dare, and then pull that shellback material tight. What it does is it sucks it right down on top, so it's really tight against the legs. So one more time, I'm going to put a wrap over, going to trim everything. head. Secure it. Secure my thread. We're almost done. Now I'll slide the wings down. Now, can you see why I do the wings that way? What do you think about those legs? Yeah, and you got the same number on each side. They splay out really nice. They're not a big chunk that goes back like this on the fly. They come out like this, and they move in the water, and they look really good. And that's how I tie the majority of my nymphs, is with those types of legs. So now we'll just, anytime you put something hard like a mylar, like a piece of monofilament on the hook under thread, you need to glue it. You just really need to. Don't think that your knots are so good that you won't be able to, that it won't ever come undone. You get this nylon thread wet, it'll stretch, and that the hard plastic flashback will come flipping right up. So we'll just add a drop of glue. Now a lot of times, doing it again. How was that? Jeez.
That was enough.
Plugged up. Anyway, a lot of times you'll be tying this kind of fly, and you'll just want to make sure the proportions. You see how the proportions are with the tail, the abdomen, the thorax. You just want to always check your proportions. Anyway, there's a parasol emerger. Now, how do I fish this? I don't fish this one to catch fish. I fish this one on the surface as an indicator. When it lands, it doesn't spook fish. And I drop a trailer fly down below it, usually a bead-headed type nymph, to get down to where the fish are. So it's a really stealthy approach to spring creeks, edge water, and those types of things. I do this as a 3-fly rig in Idaho because I can do that. I got the parasol up on top, I've got the beadhead nymph down underneath, and then trailing off the beadhead nymph, I've got something else like a scud or something in the spring creeks that I fish. And it's a deadly combination, but that's why I tie this fly. Parasol emerger, so everybody take a look at that, and I'll get cleaned up so we can get out of here and get Marty in. Thank you for coming.